baseball fans. Welcome to another episode of Put Me in Coach, a podcast all about the great sport of baseball, America's pastime. The game where you hit the ball with the bats and you touch them all when you hit it out there into the outfield. My name is Matt Coggins.
And my name is Carl Mizell, and that was really the most succinct explanation of the sport that we love. If you somehow accidentally
not familiar with baseball,
yeah, if you somehow accidentally stumbled onto a baseball podcast and this is the first one you're hearing, you could do worse.
Yeah, welcome
for first time explainers. Well done. How are you, friend?
I am doing okay. We of course took last week off because we've been working like crazy. Life's been nuts, and it certainly has on my end. But things are finally starting to calm down. And I'm starting to maybe get some sleep this week, believe it or not.
Ooh.
How have you been, bud?
I've been great. I had a good. I was just telling you off pod that my other podcast, we just decided to punt for a week because everything has just been so hectic. But otherwise, I've been really good. I took my son and my daughter to Motor City Comic Con on Friday, and that was a lot of fun. As soon as my 3-year-old, she found out that her brother was dressing up in a costume. So I had to hurry up and buy her a costume. And she initially wanted to be Batman, but then she went with Princess Peach.
Okay.
Which was a wild pivot.
Yeah.
But she had so much fun. People were waving at her. She was like, people recognized it was Princess Peach from Super Mario Brothers, including one woman who was also dressed as Princess Peach. And my daughter was just losing her mind. My son, he's over it, but his problem is the walking. He just doesn't like all the walking. And then Saturday I got to see a show. My wife and I don't live too far from the Wharton Center here in East Lansing. I got to see a production of Six.
Ooh.
Which I've been out of the theater game for a while now, so I didn't really know much about it, but it was a damn good show. It was a really, really good show. The production value was excellent for a really small. It's basically, I assume you know a little bit about it. It's presented as
Henry the Fifth's 6 wives or whatever. Or,
the
Six wrong Wives king. I don't know.
Yeah, it's Henry the Eighth. Which is sort of there is a moment in the show where that's played up. Like, who was the wives of Henry the Fifth? I don't know. There's a reason people remember us, is the whole premise, but it's presented like a girl group, like a pop concert. Yeah. So the band is on stage with them. There's lights and everything. The costumes were phenomenal. And you're in New York. I mean, if it's still on Broadway, I would highly.
I'm not sure if it is. I heard the soundtrack a ton. My wife was really into the soundtrack when it came out. But it's one of those shows. I don't know. It's wild. You're like, you're in New York. You can see Broadway all the time, and I'm like, yeah.
Usually, I mean, you have access to it.
That's right. It used to be my only days off were Mondays because I worked in theater, and guess what? That's the day that all theater takes the day off.
Yep. Exactly.
But I want to see some shows soon, and maybe I will. That's what we're all about on this show. Positivity, positive thinking, wishful thinking.
Baseball, theater, positive thinking.
And as a matter of fact, that's our topic of conversation today. We're going to be having a bit of a conversation, a discussion about toxic fandom, what it means when you take this sport a little too seriously, your fandom a little too seriously, and you lash out a little bit. And it's going to be a little different than our normal episodes. We didn't really do a ton of like deep dives. We're not doing a big history lesson. This is us kind of just talking out how we feel about the state of toxic fandom in the sport today. Does that sound about what we planned on, Carl?
Yeah, no. We talked about, fandom in general, toxic fandom specifically, but then also like, can there be an inverse to that?
Yeah.
Because I think if you were to poll the members of the most active members of the Detroit Tigers subreddit, they would say that guy can eat a bag of dicks. He's too positive about me.
Matt and Carl in particular are a little too positive about this team.
Yeah, they're too positive, too patient.
Yeah. What's the one I keep getting? Oh, quit making excuses for ownership. It's like, buddy, if you even knew me, you would know I don't give a shit about the billionaire pizza boy that owns the Detroit Tigers. But we're going to get into all of that. I'm going to do a little deep dive on a certain character of the Mets fandom. Actually, two characters from Mets fandom.
Yeah.
But before we get into all of that, let's talk about the baseball news. Boy, a couple of weeks ago, Carl, maybe a month ago, we were like, okay, Ippei Mizuhara has been booked. He's in jail. He admitted to his crimes. The Shohei Ohtani betting scandal is now behind us, and he can go chase that pitcherless MVP. But wait, because another one of his, another coworker from the Angels, David Fletcher, former Angel now within the Braves minor league organization, he also made bets on sports. They didn't specify if it was baseball or not, but made sports bets with that same crooked bookie that Ippei Mizuhara used. MLB has launched an investigation. All other things I've heard about Fletcher lately is that he has a pretty sick knuckleball, and I guess they're testing him out as a pitcher. Because I remember saying, hey, David Fletcher's got a sick knuckleball. And I'm like, David Fletcher... He's not a pitcher. What the hell?
the infielder?
Yeah. I don't recall him doing that. But anyway, it seems like more and more people are getting roped into this scandal. And it continues to bring up the conversation of what's going on with gambling and baseball right now.
A lot. As it turns out, I mean, there's a scandal. Tim Donaghy, I know we mentioned him before, former NBA referee, served some prison time back in like 2007 because he got caught up in a betting scandal, and that was almost 20 years ago. We have David Fletcher getting roped into this as well. I mean, you can't turn on a game without some sort of ads and probability and all this sort of stuff. The
Three
Tigers,
times a game, every game, the Tigers will give you a parlay bet. And does it hit? Almost never. But it's just like, can we not do this? This sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. And those parlays don't hit because, well, the Tigers don't either. But yeah. Thank you. It's all gross and icky, and I've said it on this show before. I'll say it to anybody who will listen. This is just the first of what I assume are going to be several big betting scandals in sports. And I try not to be too hyperbolic about it as well, but I also think this is going to be the beginning of what I think is going to be a full-blown, like, public crisis.
Yeah, I agree. A health crisis.
Yeah, because not to digress too much, but I just read a piece on Defector about this where they were interviewing somebody who treats people with gambling addictions, and they said it used to be a little bit easier. Is there a casino on your way home from work? Okay, let's pick a different route to work. Now, what are you supposed to tell them? Disconnect your internet and throw your phone in a lake? Like, you can't do that in 2024. These phones are our lifelines. The internet is our lifeline. So it's going to get better before it gets worse. And I am more scared of my kids becoming gambling addicts than any other thing that they could possibly become.
I'm very thankful that I don't have an addictive personality. I do sports betting purely for the fun of it, and I rarely do it. And when I do it and I lose, I go, okay, well, that's enough sports betting for a month or two. I don't put a whole lot of money into it. I don't waste it because I'm so precious with my money. But I know there's that thrill, that adrenaline of winning that comes with sports betting that has so much less to do with the money and more about the adrenaline of it, you know?
Yeah, I and honestly, I see it so infrequent. It was such a shock to me on Easter. I went and visited my mom's side of the family and my two cousins who are brothers, and the older of those two cousins, his son. So those three guys were all sitting on their phones. Were watching the Tigers game. The NCAA tournament was going, and every single one of them had, I think, like DraftKings. Like they were scrolling, like they had bets going on everything.
Jeez. And
it was so weird to see, like, IRL.
Yeah.
I don't think they have problems. By any stretch of the imagination. They seem to have their lives under control, but that can't be said for everybody. And I don't think it should be that easy for people to get that.
Well, speaking of something that might be a tool that people shouldn't have, I'm killing it at these transitions today. StatCast has a new tool, bat speed. They're measuring bat speed, and they have the algorithm to do so. How much does it matter? In my opinion, and this humble non-statistician's opinion, jack shit, because they're talking about how like Luis Arias has a very short swing and a very quick swing. So you're like, oh yeah, he hits a lot, right? Yeah, that's awesome. You know who else does? A lot of really shitty hitters. A lot of the White Sox. And then they compared the opposite. They say, okay, you know, has a long and not necessarily slow, but a long swing that's a little bit on the quicker side is Giancarlo Stanton, a great power hitter. He's really come out of his shell this year. He's been great. You know who has a very similar hitting profile to Giancarlo Stanton? Javi Baez, the worst qualified hitter in baseball. And I look at this tool and I'm like, they were going nuts for it. It came out on the day that I was watching a ESPN broadcast, and they're going absolutely nuts for it. They get Sarah Langs on there, and she's explaining like the intricacies of how the stat works, because that's her whole deal. And I'm just like, this means nothing. It means nothing. It's stats that we already kind of had with like barrel rate and swing speed in general. But now it's just they've come up with a new fun tool that they can explore and try to use it to diagnose good or bad hitters, when I don't think it works the same as a lot of other stats. Your opinions, Carl?
Now, I'm with you. It's interesting. That's it. And I mean, it really, what it sounds like is the start of one of those math problems that we hated. Garrett Cole throws a fastball at 97 miles an hour from 60 feet 6 inches away, and Javi Baez has a 7.5 foot long swing arc with a bat speed of X and Y axis. It's cool, all right, but we need to see a body of like a data set, a long enough, large enough data set. Right now, it's just something new to go, hey man, that's cool. It's another way to compare players. And honestly, if I was a Major League Baseball player, I know a lot of players don't like all of the modern analytics and whatnot, because they think it's just another way for ownership in the front office it's another tool in their toolbox to put them down. You know what I mean? To devalue them. It's there's been a lot of talk about like wearable biosensors, and the stuff that the data that they can capture. Players, the union has fought vehemently against that information being given to the teams, because then the teams can then turn around and use that as ammunition against the players potentially. Right. Like, it could go either way. So I would think that this is something players are not interested in at all. It's just one more thing to cloud, see ball, hit ball.
Yeah. And in general, it's sort of like, some players can adjust these things over the course of a season. You look at a player like Spencer Torkelson, for instance, who's struggling at the plate for a decent chunk of the season, and then within the last 2 weeks, it seems like he's finally started to figure it out. He's increased his batting average by like 20 points over the last 3 weeks. And if you looked at his Baseball Savant page on April 15th versus May 15th, it's a completely different player. I don't think some of these stats really figure in the whole story of a player, Yeah. And what I've noticed is that they're using this to tell stories about certain teams. We've been chatting on the Discord a lot about the differences between the Royals and the Tigers, and why are the Royals succeeding so much this year. And people have said, oh, look at their bat speed. Look at how much they're hammering that ball. Look at how the ball is leaving their bat. As a team, the Royals are hitting the ball hard, and they're hitting it often. And you dig into the numbers, and you go, no. The Royals aren't. Bobby Witt is. Salvador Perez is. The Royals as a whole are not. It's two guys that are doing it very well, that take that, one thing I do remember from math class is that average is not always the greatest picture, because you could have two guys that are taking that average and moving it way over here. Yep. And these guys in the middle are just sort of allowing that mean to be in the middle. Again, not a math guy, but
I was going to say, no, you're on the right court. You need to start looking at the mean, median, and mode here. Like, you can't just look at the average and go, we're all doing great. No, you're not.
Finally, in our baseball stories here, I wanted to share a story about Ronel Blanco. He's been a great, narrative this year. Relief return starter for the Astros in a year where they really need starting pitching. He was suspended for sticky stuff after the umpires claimed that his glove was covered in, quote, the stickiest stuff I've ever seen. How many times have you heard that fucking line before?
And before we even move on, you don't see stick.
Yeah.
You feel stick.
I feel that stick. Now, this wasn't Phil Cuzzy that ejected him, so at least there's that. Remember last year, Phil Cuzzy ejected like 3 different guys for sticky stuff, saying it was the stickiest stuff he's ever seen. And Blanco, the Astros, and the coaches, they all say the same line that Max Scherzer said last year. It's just sweat and rosin, the classic sticky stuff, the stuff that's allowed by the league. And you know what? As much as I like to say, oh, the Astros are fucking cheaters, trash cans, blah, 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 I believe them. The league has been, the umpires have been fucking insane about how they're mandating what is allowed sticky stuff and not. This isn't spider tack. Nobody's got fucking spider tack in the clubhouse. It'd be insane to apply it now when you know that they're checking you every inning. Yep. And so here he is with too much sticky stuff, and we're led to believe that the umpires know exactly how much that's supposed to be, and if he crossed the line, I mean, I'm growing really frustrated at this because, you know, eventually it's going to be your favorite team and your favorite pitcher getting ejected for this shit, and it tars their reputation. It sucks because it gives the umpires another reason to personally retaliate against players, and it's all something that should be allowed. We want our players to be able to have a good grip on the ball, or else they're going to get somebody hurt.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. Funny, this baseball that I'm holding in my hand, this is my equivalent of a fidget spinner. I have several at my desk, but this is one that my son found at the park over the weekend, and he brought it home because, as he said to my wife, Daddy loves baseballs, not baseball. Daddy loves baseballs. He just thinks I love baseballs.
As many as you can.
He's
many
like
as you can. Cat catching you a bird, I think.
Exactly. And I had it on a video call at work, and my coworker was like, "Oh, it looks like spider tack on that." He IM'd me on it. But to that point, I just wanted to tell that cute story about my son, but also to tell you that as somebody who pitched, I pitched in high school and I pitched in an adult league. I've said it before, sunscreen and rosin, a little bit of sweat. You want the best grip possible. And I believe it was Jason Benetti was talking about it on the Tigers broadcast, or if somebody was bringing it up, and they said like his spin rate wasn't markedly higher. Like there were none of the telltale markers of stuff usage. Like there's no there. Now, he theoretically could have been using stuff the whole time. We'll see when he comes back from his suspension whether or not it works. But I remember a couple of years ago, Bryce Harper was like, "Yeah, we want you to have a good grip on that ball. We don't want to die, but we want it to be fair." And I think there is a way to do it. And I think this is, like you said, it's just it's too subjective. There's too much room for vendettas, and the players are too close to the umpires all the time. I mean, there has to be a better way, is what I'm saying. And I'm completely with you. Anything that gives an opportunity to an umpire to make it the ump show, I'm not for it.
Because they seize that opportunity every time.
Oh God, they fucking do. Did you see it when the Tigers were playing? The Tigers were playing Tampa. And Skip Schumacher, they tried to boot Schumacher, and he's like, "No, I saw what you fuckers did to Boone. You can't do that. You can't do this to me." And they didn't kick him out. They didn't boot him because they couldn't show
who was yelling. Yeah. I think it was a hitting coach. But yeah, they tried to eject the main manager, and he was like, "It wasn't me yelling at you. I don't know what you want me to do. It wasn't me."
Yeah.
Very fascinating the way the umpires have been this year. Terrible. But the people, every time you're like, "Yeah, the umpires suck," people are like, "Well, actually, they're getting better." It's like, remember that thing I just said about Bobby Witt? Those handful of really good umpires are taking the really shitty ones and bringing that average up.
Yeah.
All right, we got to move on to our main topic.
But before we do, my buddy here wants to. This is what he's. He's just doing this the whole time while we're recording. He's just trying to get my attention.
This is why you got to watch Put Me in Coach on YouTube.
Right? You get to see
that kind of content.
Cat content. Main topic.
Our main topic this week. Toxic fandom. Insert Britney Spears toxic right here. So we've actually been kind of brewing this episode for a decent chunk of the season, and it started for me when Francisco Lindor started this season playing kind of poorly for the Mets, and he still hasn't really broken out yet. I think he's still floating around the Mendoza line, but he's really struggling to start the season, and fans in New York were starting to boo him. Same as they did for Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander last year. A big reason why I think those two guys kind of head for the hills at the trade deadline. The New York fans, they boo. And everybody says that's the hard part about playing in New York. You play with kind of a rough crowd. But it's not just New York either. It's, the Pirates closer David Bednar. He blew like 3 saves in a row earlier in the season. And, Steel City faithful, they're booing him. Rowdy Tellez at one point after a game had stop a press conference and be like, listen, we don't really appreciate how the fans have been booing this guy. He's doing his best every night, Edwin Diaz of the Mets broke down crying the other day because he blew a save. Javi Baez comes up to the plate to boos no matter where he plays. In out of town, he kind of feeds on it because it's usually like Chicago fans that hate his guts no matter what, usually from the Cubs days. But Detroit fans boo him too because he's not very good. And but do you remember when he played for the Mets and the Mets fans were booing him? So then when him and Lindor started doing good, they gave him thumbs down and started booing back. I love that shit. But again, Mets fans booing their players once again. This past week, the Padres were swept by the Rockies, which appropriately we aired the losers as a rerun last week, and I was like, there's a lot of really bad teams in the league this year. Let me show you how bad a team can really be. And I'm like, okay, the Spiders never swept a team, especially a team above 500 like the Padres. The Padres have been good this year. They took 4 series in a row and then got swept by the Rockies, and then after they got swept, their fans were booing them. And I find it so fascinating because here we've got all these instances of fans booing their team and their players. You look online and you see the vitriol coming out, and it led me to just start to thinking about why do people behave like this when it's a game, it's a sport, it's a fan. You're supposed to like these guys. And granted, I know, I'm not a big fan of Javi Baez, but I still feel for the guy. I don't look at him and think he's not trying to play baseball. He's not trying to make contact with the ball. So, this is why I want to talk about this. It all comes back to me to Trey Turner's season last year. He did a great in the WBC, and then he started the season, his first season with the Phillies, kind of poorly. And then the fans were like, hey, you know what we should do? Philly fans of all fans, by the way. We should show up and start giving Trey a standing ovation every time he comes to the plate. And maybe that's sort of what he needs to succeed. And sure enough, it fucking worked. And he's been one of the best Phillies hitters since that moment.
There was I'm a huge comic book nerd as well. And there was a storyline that I can't remember which Marvel Comics writer tried back in the 70s where he wanted to just have Captain America chuck his shield in the Hudson River and say, I'm done knocking down buildings and killing people. It hasn't worked. I'm done. That's what it feels like Philly fans did last year. They were like, guys, we have a reputation. I don't know if you know this. We have a reputation for being really shitty people. Why didn't, instead of that, we just be nice?
They are called the city of brotherly love. I mean,
it's right there, and it worked. Now, is it permanent? I'm skeptical because the Eagles are still a thing. And I lived in Philly for almost 2 years. They take that shit extremely seriously. But it couldn't hurt. Be nice. Have we tried being nice, you guys?
Please? How do you feel about this? Like, do you feel like it's gotten a little out of hand the way people are reacting so strongly to every win, loss, everything in between? Like the way that people have gotten so, I think, out of control, especially with the negativity, especially online, in person too. If they're booing in person, they're booing online too. Where do you sit with this toxicity?
Personally, I try to take the tack of they're people, and I think this all comes back around. So many of the things that I have complained to you about vis-a-vis fans and fandom circle back around to me thinking that a lot of people don't understand not the game or the sport, but the deeper behind the scenes stuff. Like, well, I don't know, why didn't the Tigers sign so and so? Why didn't they do that? Maybe they did. And maybe that guy, who is an autonomous human being who can make his own fucking choices, decided, I don't want to play in Detroit. Nothing against you, Detroit.
Right.
But they think that it's a video game. If you just make the slider go far enough and make the number big enough, that person will automatically. Like, they don't think that these people are people. They think that this is the only time I will ever say, man, it was so much better back in the 40s or 50s or whatever.
Right.
But back when the reserve clause was around and teams basically owned the players, and the players were more like the people in the stands, they were just a little better paid. There was more of that understanding and that connection. But now that the players are mostly, everybody thinks that every baseball player is a millionaire, and they're not. I think that it's just hard for people to connect. So they don't realize that they're booing a human being. They're, you know what I mean? Like there's this disconnect. And so I just try to think, hey man, it would fucking suck for me if I was Javi Baez. Do you think Javi Baez doesn't know that he sucks?
Right.
Right now? Like, he might have all the belief in himself that he will eventually get out of it. But right now he knows that he's in it. He knows when somebody's struggling, they know. You don't need to remind them. That said,
yeah,
you did pay a lot of money for that ticket, and as long as you're not being, attacking anybody personally or being shitty about it, if you're just booing, I don't see a problem with that.
Just imagine showing up to your job, and every time, like 4 times a day, you're sitting at your desk, and there is a 20-foot wide billboard that says exactly how shitty you are at your job 4 times a day, every day. Can you imagine that?
No, and that's the thing. You cannot imagine the level of scrutiny. And then to extend that analogy further, imagine that you get a text message, and then you get another text message, and then another, and then another, and then another. It's just random people telling you how fucking terrible you are.
Yeah.
Just out of the blue. And then you're just standing in line at the gas station, and some guy taps you on the shoulder and calls you a fucking bum because you're 3 for your last 47.
Yeah. And that's all it is. It's just he's not hitting. Like to me, I think that what really crosses the line is this sort of magical thinking, like this idea that, like, oh, if only they could do this, they'd be the best team in the league. And I think you and I are pretty realistic about the Tigers. We love them. We watch every game. And yet we're pretty realistic about, like, this team's probably not going to make the World Series this year. Would it be cool if they did? Abso-fucking-lutely. And I will cheer when that happens.
Yeah.
But part of the fun about being a fan is sort of having those expectations low, and then the team beating them, beating expectations, beating everything you thought was possible about them. And that also, when they come short of those expectations, you don't feel like your day is ruined or you got to sit there online and start fighting with people. I mean, it drives me nuts. And I do feel like online feeds into this. People kind of work themselves up in online communities. They're constantly fighting about everything, about politics, about sports, But to me, it's like trash talk another team. Trash talk the White Sox. White Sox fans have been talking so much shit about us lately. Go stand up for your team and trash talk. That's what the internet discourse is supposed to be for. Don't shit talk your own team. That's not being a good fan. That's not being fun.
Yeah, be critical.
Critical, yes.
But don't immediately jump onto your subreddit and can immediately, the subreddit of your team and start trying to dismantle your team or start making just absolutely unrealistic trade proposals, or start blaming ownership, or saying, like, I saw one recently, like the Rangers won the World Series before, like the Tigers started their rebuild before the Rangers. Yeah, we get it. They had a shitty front office. They fucking sucked. They signed Semyon and Seager and they won the World Series. No, they didn't, genius. They finished in 4th place that first year they were all on that same team.
Right.
They won it in their 2nd year. Same thing with Kansas City. Like, they've built internally. And so being in the same division, people, and they're so myopic. It's 162 games. It's not like football. I can understand football, because if you lose 3 in a row in the NFL,
season's basically over.
Your season you're definitely not looking good. You lose 3 in a row in baseball, and you're like, oh, fuck, man, where do you want to go get dinner?
Yeah, and it's like you said, the myopy, the
myopic nature of fans.
Yeah, it's a
myopia.
It's almost like the people that hate their own teams, and I truly mean this. I think the people that hate their own teams like to ignore objective reality. For instance, I had an argument with a guy the other day who was very critical about some of the things I was saying in support of how the Tigers rebuild is going. And he said, how come not a single player in the starting lineup is hitting above 200? And I said, well, that's not fucking true at all.
Yeah, patently untrue.
And he said, well, they're all a bunch of 100 and 200 level hitters. And I said, okay, well, for one, offense is down across the whole league. For two, if you actually go on Baseball Reference, a tool that everybody can use, you would notice that most Tigers hitters, even as bad as the offense is this year, most Tigers hitters are hitting about league average. 1 or 2 is a little bit more. Wenzel Perez and Riley Green are a little bit more than league average. A couple are below it, like Javi Baez, Spencer Torkelson, etc. But, like, again, you can't. Your hatred for your own team shouldn't actually blind you to objective reality.
No.
And that actually leads me to somebody I wanted to talk about this week, and this is the biggest bit of research that I did was about this guy. He goes by the name Frank the Tank. Had you heard of Frank the Tank before I introduced you to the concept, Carl?
Unfortunately, yes.
He is a kind of an unavoidable figure online. If you're not familiar, he's a very large man who will pretty much react to every Mets loss or series loss with extreme, over-the-top anger, and will get on camera and basically say just how absolutely terrible the Mets are, blah, 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 blah. He's arguably the most toxic Mets fan. He's a vlogger. He's a contributor to Barstool Sports. His name is Frank Fleming. He goes by Frank the Tank. He claims to be a lifelong Mets fan. You will almost always see him in a Mets hat, a Mike Piazza shirt, a Mets Letterman jacket. He first gained notoriety. I found this very interesting because I got a little bit into his history. He first gained notoriety when he went viral for railing against New Jersey Transit because he missed the opening ceremonies, not the game itself, just the opening day ceremonies at Citi Field, because he's commuting from somewhere in New Jersey, like deep South New Jersey. Does not live in the city limits. Takes New Jersey Transit in to go to the Citi Field game. And he just barely misses the opening day ceremonies. Why? Because there was a train derailment. And he's sitting there pissed off. He's screaming at New Jersey Transit as if they could prevent a train derailment. He contributes insight on the Mets, Devils, Knicks, and Dolphins for Barstool as a self-professed superfan of these specific franchises. He also documents his health journey and reviews soda and hot dog stands. His content is kind of all over the place. His fandom is all over the place. Why are you a Dolphins fan? But he's mostly known for these over-the-top reactions to Mets misfortunes. People claim that he's neurodivergent. I don't know about this. I haven't seen anything confirmed about that, but that's what people say. It's like, oh, he's neurodivergent, blah, blah, blah. That's why he's like that. It's like, has he said that? I don't know. I didn't see anything official. But the thing about him is that he is dramatically upset every time the Mets lose, every time they make a roster move, every time they cut a guy, every time they make a trade. Oh, this is the worst trade ever. This is the worst thing they've ever done. This team sucks. This team has always sucked, blah, blah, blah. When I found out about him, I was introduced to him. It was during the 2022 season. That's when I first started to get into Mets fandom. I was starting to hop on the bandwagon of the team. He was reacting to every loss like this team was like setting a record for losses, when in actuality they won 100 games. He's almost always silent when the Mets win. Like there's no like, hey guys, we won the game today, thank God, you know. Like there's no positive content from this guy. It's always negative. And you'll always see people defend him. It's like he's got fans, and people will defend him by saying he's always right, you know. And I'm like, well, he wasn't right about the Mets when they won 100 games. And he's like, well, they got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. It's like, that's not what he was reacting to. He didn't know that. He's not a fucking fortune teller.
No, he's an asshole. That's all. He's just another asshole who has a bigger platform.
Just another asshole. And I feel like a lot of his fans like him because he is a Mets fan, big, heavy quotes, that hates the Mets. Because the Mets have fans, and then they have people that hate him. And I don't really know why. They haven't really been a good team for most of their existence, but they have a lot of people that hate them. I don't know. But, you know, one thing I noticed the last time the Mets played the Braves, this is kind of the last bit of content I saw from him, he was betting against the Mets. Like, it's not just so much that he you know, rails against them every time they lose. He actively roots against them. He was betting in favor of the Braves, and then got pissed off when the Mets won and his bet didn't win.
Fuck you. You deserve that.
So he wears the orange and blue. He wears the Mets hat. He goes to a lot of home games. I actually saw him at Seinfeld night at Cyclones game last year, where he was honored on the field by the Mets organization. And that's fucking crazy, because I'm like, I don't think this guy likes this team. I think he just found a grift.
That'd be like me honoring my ex.
Yeah. Oh, like, we love how much shit you talk about me all the time.
Yeah.
You want a trophy?
Here, have a trophy for talking shit about me all the time. I don't know if she. It's been almost 16 years. I doubt I even register. But you get my meaning.
Yeah. And for those that might not know about what Barstool is, I don't know if you're familiar, Carl, but
yeah, if you don't know what Barstool is, I envy you.
Save yourself. It's interesting. They started as a zine in 2003. Remember those?
Which is extremely cool.
Very cool. It was all about like Boston area sports, transit information, and fantasy stats, you know, the kind of stuff that you could get before you had it online. And then they went online, they became a blog, they became one of the biggest blogs. By 2010, they were probably the biggest sports blog. And it's now underwritten by various like gambling and investment firms. They got a shit ton of sponsors. I think they're worth tens of millions of dollars. They're owned by a guy named Dave Portnoy, who's a man-child and general all-around piece of shit. He's a fellow Michigan fan like myself, but I don't blame him. He was big on like bringing Connor Stallion. If you're not familiar with the Michigan scandal, I'm not going to get into it, but he brought that guy, Connor Stallions, around to a bunch of Michigan events. I'm like, get this guy away from the team. I don't want this.
That's the worst thing you could do.
He's trolling. So they got like a really fratty image. They used to sponsor a lot of parties across the campuses in the country. They'd encourage a lot of underage drinking and general debauchery. They normalized rape culture. They'd rip off other people's content, make sexually explicit comments about Tom Brady's children. I read that at one point.
Yeah.
Wage theft from their contributors, and donating funds to right-wing causes. It is not exactly an ideal place to get your sports commentary, and here is probably one of the biggest figures in quote-unquote Mets fandom representing that site. And that's, I think, why he has a platform, is because a shitty little site like this says, hey, here's this guy that just gets pissed off every time the Mets lose. Let's put a camera in front of him. Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah.
Well, the flip side of Mr. Fleming is a guy that we got introduced to at the top of this season named Max Wiener, a.k.a. the Rally Pimp. And so he's the flip side. He's an actual comedian. He actually tells jokes. He actually has content online and stand-up that people can enjoy.
And very funny.
Extremely funny guy.
Yeah.
And he came across our radar because the Tigers broadcast during the Mets-Tigers series was interviewing him in the stands. The stands were basically empty. It was a kind of rainy, nasty week in New York. The Mets started the season 0-5. Like, they were not doing great. Gary Cohen on the broadcast called it rock bottom. And Max is basically sitting there all alone in these rain-covered stands in a big furry coat and Mets chains. He's got the big glasses on. He's got big hair. And the Tigers man on the street guy, he goes and interviews Max and says, like, you know, what brings you out here? How are you doing? How are you taking this Mets losing streak? And his positivity was just infectious. He was like, you know what? This is part of a built character as a Mets fan. They're going to lose games. But you know what? They're going to win them too. And those wins are going to mean more because of the losses that they went through. And sure enough, they did win. They went on a heater. They're about 500 now. They go back and forth, but it's the Mets. That's what happens. That's what happens in baseball in general. Your team's going to win. They're going to lose. And to have that sort of, clear-headed approach to the sport, I thought was so refreshing. And he's become kind of a mascot for the team in the last couple months.
Yeah, he met Steve Cohen, the owner. You had to tell me who it was.
Owner.
I didn't recognize him because he looked so ghoulish in the photo. I was like, I've seen pictures of Steve Cohen. He's not that ghoulish. He is.
Under the right lighting, he looks like the hedge fund vampire that he is.
Yeah, he had a pallor about him.
So I guess like this comparison of somebody who went viral simply because they're a good fan versus somebody that's perpetually viral because they're a bad fan, I think kind of spells out my argument here. The good fan makes for a fan. Like, they make for a better fan, a more enjoyable way to enjoy baseball, whereas the Frank Fleming's, like, I'm actually surprised, and I hate to say this, I'm surprised the guy's still alive, because if you get worked up like that, even if it's fake, even if it's a show, if you get worked up like that after every Mets loss, boy, I don't even know why you're a Mets fan.
No, yeah, it's like listening to me talk as a drinking game and then taking a shot every time I say because you're going to be dead in 30 minutes because I say a lot. Why would you have to be impacting your body with just that sheer constant venom.
Yeah. I used to ask people prior to the good years, the Lions have been bad most of my life, like 99% of my life. And I would ask people, like, why do you get upset when the Lions lose? It's going to happen. And they're like, you don't understand. It's actually a bit from 30 Rock. Liz Lemon comes home and her boyfriend's all sad. And she's like, why are you sad? Oh, the Islanders lost. Doesn't that happen a lot? I don't know, man. I feel like sports are so high and low that to be so angry about every loss or every prolonged losing period, life's too short, man. It's just a fucking game. Is it a very expensive procedure for playing a game? Absolutely. Do I want a World Series for the Detroit Tigers more than anything? Short of living a long life with my wife, absolutely. But you know what? When they lose a game, I turn the TV off and I go do something else, and it's a magical feeling. It goes, okay, baseball's done for the day. Time to move on.
Yes, I finally made that comment, and it was the Tigers got shut out back-to-back games by
the Marlins.
The Marlins. They got shut out in consecutive games by the Marlins. And somebody posted in the Tigers sub, like, hey, man, I don't know about you guys. I've only been a fan for a couple of years, but this is the best they've been over the last 4 years at this point in the season.
Exactly.
And I blithely said, careful, positivity is frowned upon around here. And somebody came in and said, well, they just got shut out 2 times in a row. And I said, yeah, and my fucking night goes on. I'm hanging out with my amazing wife. I'm going to go get high. It's going to be a great night. That's it. And I honestly, I don't mean to be trite, but I honestly feel like that people like that have nothing else. And that saddens me, because it's a confluence to go back to the Frank the Tank thing. I don't think I'm not shocking anybody by saying that right now, cruelty in our society, cruelty is a currency. And cynicism is a currency, and sarcasm and condescension and just anger is a currency, which is why, as a huge Ted Lasso fan, I think the people that love that television show, like I do, love it so much, because it was an opportunity to watch something that was genuine, or at least felt genuine and felt earnest. Because as somebody who I try to be in my day-to-day life, very genuine and very earnest and very free of cynicism, it's very hard when everybody around you is trying to cash in on that cynicism as a currency, like Frank the Tank. Why? If you love this team, that's great. I mean, I've always, this goes back to like when we got into that stupid shitty war 20 years ago in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, you have to love your country like you love a lover, like you accept them for their flaws. You love your baseball team like you would your wife. They're not perfect, but goddamn, they're mine. This is my wife. This is my team, and I know they're not perfect, but goddamn it, they're fucking mine, and I will fight you. You wouldn't. Why? If this brings you no joy, why are you here?
Right. And it is a long season to be living in that life. Why are you here? If you can, and I say this all the time, guys, it's 162 games. If you're going to react like this to every losing streak or every loss, what are you going to be like come September? Like, this team could be bad. We don't know. That's not how you just got to play the games and see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, the 06 Tigers, they will always be the first Tigers team that caught my eye was the 84 Tigers. I was 6 years old when they won the World Series in 84. So I'm old enough. I was my son's age now when they won the World Series, and I still remember it. But the 06 Tigers, we had just gone through like the late 90s, early aughts, the 122 lost team or whatever. Pudge joined us. Great. And then all of a sudden 06 comes around and like, holy fuck, these guys are they good? Are they good? I went and saw them play in Toronto in the middle of June, and the fans around me were still like, yeah, I don't think they're legit. And I was like, yeah, same. I don't either, but I'm going to enjoy it. And then when I went to all three games of that last series against Kansas City, where all they had to do was win one fucking game to win the division, and they got swept. They got swept by Kansas City and backed into the playoffs with the wild card. You know what I said? All right, fine. They're still in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to be there when they clinched in my lifetime, and they will eventually. They will. But in the meantime, I'm going to watch my kids grow up. I'm going to work on advancing my career. I'm going to work on developing friendships. I'm going to continue to do this podcast with you. I'm going to continue to grow as a human being and not pin every single fucking facet of my personality to my fandom of a team. Sorry, this has been on my mind all day.
And we've been working on this episode for a couple of months now, so it's been on our minds. I did want to ask Carl, what are your thoughts on toxic positivity? Can you empathize with the people that think you and I go too far in wishful thinking or positivity? Because we get that a lot. You and I are pretty active on the online Tigers circles.
Yeah.
Get a lot of the reaction of like, you're not being realistic, you're making excuses, you're too positive when everything's clearly bad. How dare you look for the good in everything going on? How do you respond to that? And can you empathize with it? Does it go too far?
It can. There's a baseball term that you might be familiar with. That some of our listeners might be familiar with. It's called eyewash. I don't know if you know the term. It's basically like fake hustle. Like you draw a walk and you sprint down the first baseline. Like, come on, man.
The Nimmo method.
You're right. Okay, well, if you come by it honest, sure. But like, okay, this is a bit of eyewash.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as toxic positivity? Yes. I think toxic positivity can be almost worse. Not in a fandom context, because this is ephemeral and fleeting and it doesn't mean anything. But in terms of sports, I do think it can be a thing because it can be the same can be true. If people are out there just saying that fucking Scott Harris doesn't Scott Harris know what a no trade clause is? Yeah, he does. And did you ever stop to think that maybe, just maybe, Eduardo Rodriguez and his agent fucked the Tigers? Like, did that ever cross your mind? Like, do you think that this guy is such an idiot that he doesn't know what a no? Like, that's one thing. But you could do it to the other side too. Like, man, I'm fucking ride or die. You know, there was somebody, it was a joke, but somebody was like, you know, if Akil Badu gets called up and only one person is cheering, it's me. If he has no fans, I am dead.
Yeah.
That whole, like, there is the opposite of that. And I used to think that was every Lions fan.
Yeah.
Because so many people like, oh, you're leaving? Oh, you're not going to be a fan anymore? You wait. Wait. When they win the Super Bowl, you come back. They went to the NFC title game this year, and I couldn't have personally cared any less. and that's fine. So can it happen? Yes. Is it as frequent? No, not really. I don't think so. Because again, A, it doesn't sell. And B, it just comes, it just reads as more fuel for the cynics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you don't really see it that much.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying about ignoring objective reality. You know, you can't look at, you know, and I'm sorry for our listeners that aren't Tigers fans. We're using a lot of Tigers specific references, but they're a great team to make that case for. They are exactly even 500 team with a lot of very strong strengths and a very big weaknesses. But you know, this could be said for a lot of teams in the league. You know, to say like, oh, the Tigers are gonna break out any minute now. They're on the verge. They're gonna do it. That's one thing. If you're gonna say, yeah, tomorrow they will go on a 10-game winning streak and it will happen. It's like, no, they've got way too many weaknesses that need to be addressed, and this isn't gonna happen overnight. And you know, like you and I have said, I think the biggest thing that I find frustrating is that people have not been mitigating their expectations very well.
Yeah.
I think we went into the season thinking, hey, they'll probably, maybe, potentially win about 80-ish up to 90 games. That would be awesome if they did that. Does that mean a playoff spot? Maybe. If it was last year, yes. If it's this year, probably not. But we didn't know that going into this season.
No.
But that's all we said. It was our expectations for the Tigers. Potential playoff spot, maybe not winning the division. Somewhere between 80 and 90 games. That was a good season after 3 really shitty losing seasons, you know? Mm-hmm. There are people legitimately in the Tigers fandom that think this was the year they were going to win the World Series. And I said, in what world did this team make you think that after the past 4 years? Like, part of being in a rebuild, even though this is a double rebuild, is patience. You know what I mean? And I guess that's what I'd like to preach to people in general, is mitigate your expectations and be patient with your team. And when they win, celebrate those wins, because when they lose, that's going to make those wins feel sweet. You know, if you'll win every game, you're going to get spoiled. You're going to look like a Braves fan. I had a Braves fan try to tell me today, it's so hard being a Braves fan. I was like, you won a World Series within the last presidential election. If your team has won a World Series since Joe Biden has been president, you don't get to bitch about how hard it is to be a Braves fan. Fuck you.
I would have smacked that person in the mouth.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's like they're not used to losing. When they lose or they drop 2 games in a row, they go, this is the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. And I'm like, you don't even know pain.
I know, right? It's so, again, it's like I said, I don't mean to be trite and I don't mean to sound condescending, but I honestly, it genuinely saddens me when I think that if you get this worked up about sports, you don't have anything else.
Yeah.
There's nothing else in your, I mean, I'm not saying you don't have loved ones and family and friends and you're not just sitting there eating Hungry Man dinners and crying. But not that I know from experience or anything.
No.
But, you know, like get a hobby, you know, go
play baseball yourself. That's what I'd say.
Join a softball league. I've got my musical instruments out. I bang on those every once in a while. I got my Gundams over here. All my Gundam models up on my shelf. I build models.
Fuck yeah.
I have a lot of enriching activities in my life. Try one. I honestly don't know what to tell you.
Pick up a video game. Pick up baseball. I mean, like, there's so many things you can do with your baseball fandom to explore the game better. The people that just watch it, I gotta say this. Now that I have been playing a little bit of softball, I'm like, go out and play. Go swing a bat. Go to a batting cage. Tell me that it's as easy as you think it is for, Kerry Carpenter or whatever. Like, go try to swing a bat one time and tell me how hard it is to hit a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. I can't hit a 70-mile-an-hour fastball, and that is much slower.
It is.
That is a meatball in the MLB.
The league that both leagues that I played in, I was really surprised. I would say the competition in this league here in Lansing was better than the competition I played against in Philadelphia, which is shocking to me. But my last year in Philly, we played a fall ball league, and we didn't have enough teams, so we had to play like a bunch of like 30 and under teams. And this one lefty came in throwing mid 80s with a gnarly slider, and I fouled that right off my big toe, broke it, toenail fell off. That sucked. But you know what? Now I know.
Now you know.
I know this shit ain't easy. I've been doing this for a long time, and not at a very high level. And even at that not very high level, that shit is hard. It's 70. Yeah. I am telling you, you think it's not that fast? It's that fast.
What I wasn't prepared for was I've been put at second base a lot for this softball league, and so you got to get low to make plays. You gotta squat, you gotta get ready to receive a ball, you gotta get down to catch the ball. My knees fucking hurt all the time now. My knees and my thighs hurt so bad. So I beg every baseball fan that sits here and watches every game and bitches about how bad your team is, don't even play softball. Just go squat in a field for 9 innings worth of time and tell me how fucking easy it is. Because it's very hard for me and I'm in a lot of pain. And I play on Thursday.
The league that I played in, I can't remember the name. I was going to try and look it up, but we played at this field in South Philly that had field turf like they have in Ford Field. This is supposed to be like modern turf, like the modern stuff. Now I understand why these guys don't want to play on it. A ball, soft fly ball landed in front of me in left field, and then it just bounced right over my head. I wasn't ready for that. But my knees, my thighs, my shins, like everything, just it beats the fuck out of you. And they do it 6 days a week for 6 months. I don't want to hear shit from you, Ted, or whatever your name is.
Yeah, Ted.
All right,
fuck you, Ted.
Yeah, fuck you, Ted. Now I have a neighbor named Ted. He's a nice guy. I don't mean anything about it to him if you listen, Ted. And now we're just turning this into like a big bitch sesh. And another thing,
we're adding to the negativity.
Yeah, we're adding to the but in coming from a positive angle, because we're trying to tell you, like, man, just be chill. This is supposed to be fun. This is a game.
It's a game.
This is a game. We are so I wake up grateful for the things that I have in my life, and baseball is one of them, because it's one of the coolest fucking things that I've ever seen in my life. And I love it. I just love it so much. And I wish more people, again, and I've said this many times, I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I don't want to tell you how to be a fan. But if you are going to be a fan, I would encourage you every so often to audit your fandom and kind of check in with it and go, what am I getting out of this? Like, I haven't played MLB The Show in over a month, and I don't know if I will ever again.
Whoa.
Because I very recently, like, I was playing ranked online. I having a good time. I had a much healthier relationship with the game than I did in past years. But then I just realized this isn't fun. Like, what am I doing? I'm collecting digital cards to use in a digital game. Like, it wasn't bringing me any joy, and it just frustrated me. So now I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, and that's frustrating me, but at least I know that there's an end. There's an end point to this. And then I will be able to complete it and put it down and pick up something else. But it is bringing me joy, and it's something new. but I needed to take a break and step away from that particular fandom because it wasn't bringing me anything.
Yeah. I do find, to wrap this all up, to just say that it's a really important point, Carl. If this baseball shit's getting to you, it's okay to walk away. You don't have to watch every game. It's 162 games. It's a lot of games. And, to be emotionally invested in them, whether or not you're taking it positively or negatively, it's tough. When the Tigers dropped those 2 games against the Marlins, I said, you know what? With this combined with the negativity in the online fan discourse, I said, I'm going to take a little break from the Tigers. Did I mean it? Absolutely not. They took a day off, and then they were back in Arizona. I was there tuned into that game. But at least I told my brain, you don't have to do this every day. You don't have to be so emotionally invested in it. And when they lose, you say, all right, turn the phone off, turn the TV off, walk away, do something else. And I think that that's important. And, folks, if you're struggling with mental health, if there is, something else going on in your life, if you're struggling not just with your feelings about baseball, but about your life in general, if you're feeling maybe you need to talk to somebody, seek out those resources, the suicide hotline. Don't use BetterHelp. I'm not going to advocate for them, but
they're garbage.
Trash organization. But reach out to the people in your life, or if you don't have anybody in your life, there are online resources and phone resources for you. And I really encourage you to do that, because negativity is so hard, and this world sucks right now. We're in a presidential election year. We're in an Olympics year. There's a lot of bullshit going on in the Middle East. Obviously times are tough right now, and the last thing we need is for everybody to be pissed off about baseball, a game, America's pastime. We're passing the time, and we're supposed to be having fun. So, that's my general thing I want to say is like, relax.
Yeah, no. And I would like to piggyback and just to make sure that nobody thinks Matt or I are being pithy about this. We have both had I don't think we're telling tales out of church to say we both struggled with mental health. Most people do. And to that point, MLB The Show was driving me crazy 3 years ago. Literally, it was making me a bad person to be around. And I had to walk away. I had to reevaluate that. So I would like to reinforce what Matt said. If you are in that position, within whatever means that you have and with whatever access you have, if you feel like you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. I mean it.
Yeah. But if you're having a good time, crack open a beer, watch some baseball. I know I am tonight.
Oh, yeah.
As far as I know, the Tigers have not scored. Oh, they have scored. Okay. Hey,
they just run. I just looked up to see Carpet and Oppo Taco.
Nice.
So
let's fucking go. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here at Put Me in Coach. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about rebuilds. We're going to look into exactly these two teams playing each other right now, the Royals and the Tigers. How do rebuilds work? What is a successful rebuild? How long do they take? Why do they take so long? Why do they take so fucking long?
God, why?
But until then, check us out online. Please rate and review us. Check us out on YouTube. You see Carl's cat at one point in this video, and I know I got a delight out of it. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate you, and baseball. Put Me in Coach is an Arctic Sounds original podcast hosted by Matt Coggins and Carl Mizell. Theme music is by Quack Quack Seatback. Edited and produced by Matt Coggins. Check out the footnotes of this episode to see links to all the great highlights, articles, and sources we mentioned on the podcast today, as well as the full theme song and ways to get in touch with us. For more, find us on Twitter and Instagram at PutMeInPod or at our website, putmeincoachpod.com.